Hello guys, welcome back to our anime explainer. Guys, please like the video and subscribe to my channel. Today is explanation of Tales of Herding God Part 291 to 293 based on novel. So let's start. Celestial Venerable Yu's coffin was well guarded, and there were Youdu runes flashing on the outside. They surrounded the coffin and gave off a mysterious feeling in their silence. When Qin Mu reached here, his heart actually had no more excitement. Instead, he surveyed the runes with a calm expression and deduced the marvels in the runes. These runes were left behind by Earth Count, and they were used to protect Celestial Venerable Yu's corporeal body. Actually, even if Earth Count didn't use his runes to protect him, Celestial Venerable Yu's corporeal body wouldn't age or die. That was because Celestial Venerable Yu was the only one that had received the blessings from all of the ancient gods. The 7 Celestial Venerables from the past had all received the blessings from the ancient gods. Celestial Venerable Hao, who opened up the 5 elements divine treasure, received the blessings from 5 elements star sovereigns and heaven duke. His corporeal body couldn't age, and 5 fortunes shone down on him. Celestial Venerable Ling, who opened up the 6 directions realm, received the blessing of Mother Earth, having endless good fortune, and being unable to age or die. Celestial Venerable Yu, who opened up the 7 stars divine treasures, received the blessings from Great Sun Sovereign, Great Moon Sovereign, and Heaven Duke. Her corporeal body also couldn't age or die, and she also wouldn't get sick. Celestial Venerable Hua, who opened up the Celestial Being divine treasure, received the blessings from the 4 deities. He could grow old with unfailing eyes and ears, turning dangers into fortunes. Celestial Venerable Yu, who opened up the life and death realm, received the blessing from Earth Count. He was immortal and couldn't die, and his primordial spirit was forever strong. Celestial Venerable Yun, who opened up the divine bridge realm, received the blessing from Heaven Duke. He was immortal and couldn't age, and his primordial spirit was clear and bright. Even though these 6 celestial venerables had received blessings and received immortality, the content of every blessing was different. For example, Celestial Venerable Yu received Earth Count's blessing to be immortal, to not die and have a primordial spirit that remained forever strong. However, being immortal and not dying didn't mean he wouldn't age. Thus Celestial Venerable Yu would still age. This was because Earth Count didn't control the rule of the corporeal body not aging. He could give Celestial Venerable Yu an eternal lifespan, but he couldn't stop Celestial Venerable Yu from aging. On the other hand, Heaven Duke could bless Celestial Venerable Yun with immortality and allow him to never age. However, Heaven Duke didn't possess the method to allow one's primordial spirit to be forever strong, so he couldn't give Celestial Venerable Yun a blessing in this area. He could only bless him with a bright and clear primordial spirit, having the Eye of Heaven. However, Celestial Venerable Yu was a person who was blessed by all of the ancient gods. The blessings of the ancient gods were blessings of law, and among them, there were still Celestial Emperor and Celestial Empress blessings. Celestial Venerable Yu originally should have had a primordial spirit that was forever strong, and he was supposed to be immortal and undying. Yet Celestial Venerable Yu's corporeal body had died in the slow winding pavilion, and his primordial spirit got shattered, so he was unable to enter Youdu. When the shattered pieces didn't enter Youdu, the blessing was rendered useless. The loophole in this really couldn't help making people think in depth about it. Celestial Venerable Hao, and Son of Heaven Yin killing Celestial Venerable Yu was only what was shown. There might be an even deeper conflict behind this. Whether Celestial Emperor and the sister of Celestial Empress had done anything, no one would know. Qin Mu thought about the deeper reason behind this, and he couldn't help shuddering. Back then, the Jade Pool meeting looked peaceful. Even after Celestial Venerable Hao assassinated Celestial Venerable Yu, everyone had just fallen into sorrow and there wasn't much movement. Everything was calm and tranquil. But who would know that under this calm surface, there was actually so much terrifying killing intent. Now when he looked at Earth Count's blessing, he was enlightened and felt the terror. Could Celestial Venerable Hao really beat such a celestial emperor? Who exactly was the winner among the three heavens of Dragon Han? He took a glance at Celestial Venerable Yu beside him. Celestial Venerable Yu had never talked about this, so he didn't know if he wasn't willing to talk about it. After reviving Celestial Venerable Yu, I must ask Celestial Venerable Yu down to the very last detail. Qin Mu raised his hand, and the coffin made of Buddha Vitality Crimson Chromium instantly opened up. The coffin lid flew a distance away before landing on the ground gently. Not much sound was made. This place was the manor of benevolent saintly king equal to heaven. There was the soul of Elder Messenger of Death's mother, and Qin Mu didn't want to disturb her. Under his magic power, Celestial Venerable Yu floated in the air. After 1,000,000 years, he was still like how he was in the past. There was no trace of time left behind on his body. He was like Qin Mu had met him in the Jade Pool. This young Celestial Venerable was like jasper flowers and trees, gentle and calm. It had been 1,000,000 years, but to Qin Mu, it was something that had only happened a few months ago. To him, it was the same as well. I can summon his soul in Youdu and guide the shattered pieces over, but I can't borrow Heaven Duke's power from Youdu, so I still have to return to the world of the living. Only in the world of the living can I borrow both Earth Count and Heaven Duke's power to reconstruct his 3 souls and 7 spirits, Qin Mu said solemnly. Elder Messenger of Death was slightly nervous. Can you really do it? His soul has been shattered for 1,000,000 years, so much time has passed. Qin Mu smiled warmly. Goddess of Heavenly Yin had also been dead for at least 400 to 500,000 years. Didn't I still bring her back? Goddess of Heavenly Yin is an ancient god. It's extremely difficult to summon her soul, and I even vomited blood from exhaustion. However, Celestial Venerable Yu was at most a god when he died, so it will be much simpler to summon his soul. He lifted the willow leaf on the heart of his brows and instantly, his God and Devil divine treasures fused into one. With his cultivation on the God path and the Devil path fusing together, his magic power was rising in chunks. Qin Mu executed the soul guide that he had improved and instantly, a 50-yard tall primordial spirit appeared behind him. The size of his primordial spirit was extraordinary now, and with God and Devil as one, he was like a tiny ancient god. Cryptic Youdu devil language came from the mouth of his primordial spirit, and the devil language was even mixed with God language. It was so complicated that even Elder Messenger of Death couldn't completely understand it. Celestial Venerable Yu, as Elder Messenger of Death, had extremely profound attainments in Youdu devil language and Youdu divine arts. However, he was lacking in the God language. The God language from the ancient celestial heavens was from Xuanju, and they came from the path of Heaven Duke. Every profession had its specialties, and because he studied Youdu divine arts way too much, his understanding of Xuanju divine arts was inferior to Qin Mu. Soul Guide. Elder Messenger of Death listened for a moment, and only then came to a realization. He cried out, this is Soul Guide, but it has been completely changed by you. Qin Mu's primordial spirit was still executing Soul Guide, and he continuously walked around Celestial Venerable Yu. His poses were weird, and when he walked in the air, it was like he was walking on flat land. His hands moved quickly and struck with mudras that transformed into all kinds of runes to mark Celestial Venerable Yu's corporeal body. Compared to the danger when he had tried to gather the soul of Goddess of Heavenly Yin, he was much familiar and unruffled this time. He still had the energy to turn his head back and smile. That's right, it's Soul Guide, I taught you before. Elder Messenger of Death gave him a stare. Even if you don't teach me, I can comprehend it myself. Qin Mu laughed loudly. His mudra skills and Soul Guide gradually gave off unknown ripples, as though it was touching some kind of law of heaven and earth. The throbbing slowly spread out from Youdu, and stretched out to every single world. The God voice and devil voice that his primordial spirit was giving off couldn't be heard by ordinary people's ears, and even divine arts practitioners couldn't hear his voice. Yet in the ears of certain ancient beings, it was like the low hum of the great Tao, a throbbing that came from the soul. The shock that was given to these ancient beings was also immense. It was as if there was an ancient god that controlled a major law executing his power that was deep and abstruse. The soul particles that were scattered throughout the world were being guided over by him, and gradually, black sand-like particles came flying over and into Youdu. Those were incomparably fine soul particles, and they shattered until they could no longer shatter under the long passage of time. The naked eye of a person couldn't detect them, but they truly existed. Because 1,000,000 years had passed, he didn't even know how the current celestial heavens and the celestial river had become. The passage of time had caused celestial venerable Yu soul particles to be scattered to most of the worlds. This had exceeded Qin Mu's expectations, and he gradually found it exhausting. More and more magic power was used up by his primordial spirit, and the voice was becoming louder and louder. Why didn't you just gather his soul back then? Elder Messenger of Death was puzzled. Back then, his soul was scattered in the celestial heavens, so it would be easier to gather them then. You wouldn't have to spend so much effort now. Back then, I still didn't know Earth Count and Heaven Duke. If I made a move to borrow Heaven Duke and Earth Count's power, I would definitely be killed by them. More and more sweat broke out on Qin Mu's forehead. His sweat evaporated to form clouds, and he said solemnly, "Now, my relationships with Heaven Duke and Earth Count are very good. They won't say anything if I borrow their power." I couldn't back then. Elder Messenger of Death had a weird expression, and it was like his mouth was stuffed with 2 eggs while his eyes stared like bronze bells. He thought to himself, does Celestial Venerable Mu have some misunderstanding about good relationships? I don't know about Heaven Duke, but his relationship with Earth Count is definitely far from good. Earth Count is just annoyed at him running to Youdu to create trouble. Qin Mu found it more and more exhausting. As he raised his hands and feet to execute the runes, they became heavier and heavier. Mudra after mudra was marked on Celestial Venerable Yu's body, and it was like raising a Mount Meru. His voice was slightly hoarse. And also, the celestial heavens at that time was too dangerous. It wasn't just Celestial Venerable Hao that wanted to kill him. The person that wanted to kill him was too strong, so strong that even Heaven Duke and Earth Count didn't dare to provoke him. Even if I revived him then, he would still have to die. Even I would have to die. Therefore I only revived his corporeal body, and got Celestial Venerable Ling to hand him to you. Only today do I dare to revive him. His body trembled violently. His primordial spirit and his corporeal body stopped at the same time. One stood on the ground, and the other stood at the heart of his brows. Each of them had wheels of lights spinning behind their heads. All kinds of runes on the wheel lit up as they swirled, shining on Celestial Venerable Yu's body. Countless soul particles came flying over, and they entered Celestial Venerable Yu's body one after another. They tunneled into his organs, into the heart of his brows, into his throat, into his heart, into his dantian, and into his nether regions. Qin Mu and his primordial spirits stood there motionlessly, while the wheels of light swirled continuously. Elder Messenger of Death was astonished, and he knew now was the crucial moment. He immediately became alert, and paper boats came sailing into Youdu to guard around the manor. The number was extremely huge, and outside was densely packed. It wasn't known how much later, it was before Qin Mu gave off a fatigued look and the wheels of lights stopped swirling before fading away. His primordial spirit moved forward and became smaller and smaller until it merged with his corporeal body. Elder Messenger of Death only let out a sigh then, and he hurriedly went forward to ask. Qin Mu didn't wait for him to speak and just said with a frown, Celestial Venerable Yu's soul, there's one portion that wasn't shattered. Instead, it's being suppressed by someone, and I can't summon it back. Elder Messenger of Death was stunned and hurriedly asked, how much of it is suppressed? Not even 10%. Qin Mu let out a shaky breath, and rested for a moment. I don't know if the portion that is lost is important or not. As for who took away the portion of his soul, I wouldn't know that. Elder Messenger of Death was flustered. What should we do? Very simple, ask Earth Count. Qin Mu said solemnly. I will bring him back to the world of the living immediately and reconstruct his souls and spirits. After his souls and spirits are reconstructed, Earth Count will be able to sense where it is from his souls and spirits. We just need to ask Earth Count to discern the location of the remaining soul. Both of them placed Celestial Venerable Yu's body on the small boat. Elder Messenger of Death's mother was busy cooking dishes, and she hurriedly said, it's almost done. Are both of you not eating after being so busy? Elder Messenger of Death hurriedly said, Mother, we have urgent matters to attend to. That woman smiled and said, then be safe on your journey. I will keep the dishes warm. That little brother, my Yua, is still young and insensible. He doesn't know how to interact with people either. So please look out for him more. Qin Mu held back his laughter and hurriedly said, Auntie, don't worry. I understand. He looked at Elder Messenger of Death, who had a black face with no emotion. When the boat sailed far away, only then did Qin Mu laugh loudly. Elder Messenger of Death's face turned blurry again, and he said indifferently, what are you laughing at? I couldn't beat you back then, but I sure can beat you now. Qin Mu immediately suppressed his laughter and said with a smile, you can even beat Celestial Venerable Yu now. I wonder if he will still recognize us after he is revived. Elder Messenger of Death fell into a daze. He said after a moment, he will forever be my elder brother. Qin Mu blinked his eyes. What about me? HMPH. Elder Messenger of Death turned his head over and revealed the devil mask on the back of his head. The devil mask suddenly stuck out its tongue at him. Qin Mu jumped in shock and examined it carefully. The devil mask was no longer the one he had carved earlier. It should be the mask that Celestial Venerable Yu had worn back then. He didn't know when Elder Messenger of Death had taken it out and worn it on the back of his head again. He must have been worried that his appearance had changed and Celestial Venerable Yu wouldn't be able to recognize him. So he found the mask to wear, Qin Mu thought to himself. When they reached the world of the living, it was still the shore of the surging river. At this moment, it was night time in the great ruins, and there wasn't as much black soul sand or as many starved ghosts in the darkness as before. Qin Mu stood on the paper boat floating on the surging river, and cast his spell once again. Gate of Heaven influence appeared and flipped horizontally to borrow both Heaven Duke and Earth Count's power. The power shone on the body of Celestial Venerable Yu, who was floating in the air. Elder Messenger of Death looked nervously at him casting his spell, and he gripped his fist tightly. After a long time, Qin Mu dispersed his magic power, and Celestial Venerable Yu landed gently on the river surface. Lan Yutian, long time no see. Qin Mu smiled at the youth standing on the river surface. That youth gradually opened his eyes and revealed a blank expression. Elder Messenger of Death became excited, and suddenly, a plop was heard. Celestial Venerable Yu sank into the river, and he stretched out his hands to flail around helplessly, gulping many mouthfuls of water as a result. The rapid current quickly swept the youth that didn't know how to swim downstream. Qin Mu and Elder Messenger of Death were dumbfounded, and they suddenly came back to their senses. Save him. After a moment, they dragged a drenched Celestial Venerable Yu ashore and placed him down. Celestial Venerable Yu almost drowned, and he kept retching to vomit out the water in his lungs. He gasped for air. Qin Mu and Elder Messenger of Death looked at each other in dismay. It's fine if his cultivation is gone, he can still cultivate. Celestial Venerable Yu rested for a moment before getting up to greet both of them. Many thanks to two benefactors for saving me. That's right, benefactors, what did you call me earlier? This youth scratched his head and blushed. I don't remember my name. The Great Ruins, Disabled Elderly Village. When day broke, Qin Mu, an elder messenger of death, brought Celestial Venerable Yu to this small village. This was where Qin Mu had once lived, and now it was occupied by hen dragons. In the village, Qin Mu stewed a hen and cooked up several dishes. He then went to Butcher's house to dig out a jar of wine he had buried under his bed. He had eaten a ghost banquet at benevolent saintly king equal to heaven's manna, and there was no taste at all, therefore, he was feeling famished. Furthermore, Celestial Venerable Yu had just revived, so he was also a little hungry. After their meals, Qin Mu, an elder messenger of death, came to the surging river and looked at the flowing river. Elder messenger of death rubbed a divine art and was about to throw into the running river when Qin Mu hurriedly stopped him. He shook his head and said, "There are countless lives in the surging river, and there's also the surging river dragon king. Look at how strong you are now. Do you want to kill all lives in the river?" Elder messenger of death gave it some thought and dispersed his divine art. The reason why he's like this now, is it because he is missing a portion of his soul, or does he really have memory loss? Qin Mu turned back to take a look. Chaos was ensuing as the hen dragons grouped up together to chase Celestial Venerable Yu. Celestial Venerable Yu got pecked until he was blooded. He was so miserable that he finally got beaten to the ground by the hen dragons. Several male hen dragons stood on the youth and crowed to the morning sun. Elder messenger of death sighed and rubbed out another divine art. He pondered and dispersed the divine art again. Look at him, how does he look like he was before? In the past, Celestial Venerable Yu was glowing with so much health and vigor. He was free and at ease, yet now, even the hen dragons dare to bully him. Qin Mu got up and chased the hen dragons away. Celestial Venerable Yu hurriedly crawled up and patted the dust and feathers off his clothes. I also can't see the cause of his memory loss. His soul is lacking something, but it's not even 10% of his soul. On the other hand, his 3 souls and 7 spirits are around. Qin Mu muttered to himself, I feel it's better for us to return to Youdu and ask Earth Count where his missing soul is. If his soul is found and he still has memory loss, it would be a problem in his head. Elder Messenger of Death nodded his head. He saw Celestial Venerable Yu being forced into the corner by a bunch of hen dragons and squatting there to cover his head. If he doesn't recover his memory, how is he going to survive in this cruel world? Elder Messenger of Death shook his head. Qin Mu walked forward, and he raised his hand to transform a trail of flames into a fire dragon, which pounced around to chase the hen dragons away. Celestial Venerable Yu looked at this situation, and his eyes lit up. He said in delight, this method is good. After saying so, he swung his hand. The hen dragons around him were closing in on him when they saw what he was doing, and they quickly dodged. When they saw nothing had happened, they were furious and pounced forward again. Celestial Venerable Yu hurriedly swung his hand again, and a trail of fire rushed out like a dragon. Numerous hen dragons escaped in all directions, and only one couldn't escape in time. It was charred, and the fragrance of cooked meat drifted out. Celestial Venerable Yu was stunned, and he looked at his hand in disbelief. He then ran over to the dead hen dragon, and started crying to mourn the death of the hen dragon. He wanted to bury the corpse of the hen dragon, and so he cried as he dug the grave. After a moment, he felt that it smelled fragrant, so he sneaked a bite. He began to cry and eat at the same time, throwing aside the pit he had just dug. He then threw the chicken bones inside the pit. Qin Mu, an elder messenger of death, looked at each other in the eyes, and they could see the astonishment in each other. Was that divine art the fire runes of Mars' sovereign? Elder Messenger of Death asked. Qin Mu nodded his head. Even though the structure of Mars' sovereign's fire runes isn't complicated, my attainments are very high. The runes got shrunk by me to the extreme, and it's hard for others to see the marvel of it. Elder Messenger of Death said, however, he saw it and learned it. Furthermore, he can still execute it. Qin Mu said with a low voice, his cultivation hasn't completely vanished, there's still a small portion, and the most crucial part is that his comprehension and aptitude are simply too heavenly-defying. I suspect. He paused for a moment and said with a weird expression, Celestial Venerable You is also an overlord body. Elder Messenger of Death mumbled for a moment, and he said, it's fine if he doesn't have any memory, just don't be too stupid. His head isn't too good. Have you ever seen anyone crying for a dead chicken before? Crying and eating it at the same time? Qin Mu plucked off a tiny strand of beard. It really seems not good. Let us go find Earth Count first. Elder Messenger of Death nodded his head, and called Celestial Venerable You over. He had only eaten half a chicken, and had a look of shame as he carried the other half over. Qin Mu and Elder Messenger of Death were helpless. The three of them boarded the small boat, and Elder Messenger of Death waved his hands. A black whirlpool appeared, and the boat sailed into the whirlpool. The whirlpool then vanished. Celestial Venerable You, why aren't you eating anymore? Elder Messenger of Death looked at him and asked, are you feeling sad, because you just burned a playmate to death and ate your friend? I'm full. Celestial Venerable You replied honestly, I really can't eat anymore. I want to eat when I'm hungry again. Qin Mu didn't know whether to laugh or cry. He thought to himself, in the past, Celestial Venerable You was such an intelligent person, and yet now he is silly. Celestial Venerable You has it in for him to bring this silly big brother around. He couldn't help feeling delighted in others' misfortune. Celestial Venerable You, the dragon Han Celestial Heavens from back then, who won? Qin Mu asked. Elder Messenger of Death hesitated for a moment, and took down the devil mask on the back of his head. He shook his head and said, I'm not too sure. At the end of the Dragon Han era, all three celestial heavens claimed to be the authentic one. As for who won in the end, I don't know. I have always been staying in Youdu, and rarely go to the outside world. When the three celestial heavens contended for hegemony, I also had a headache reaping the souls. However, he paused for a moment and said, Celestial Venerable You once found me and told me that the Heaven Alliance lost, that Celestial Emperor Yun was dead, and that she was also ready to hide in seclusion. Celestial Emperor Yun? Qin Mu asked, is that Celestial Venerable Yun? Elder Messenger of Death nodded his head. Qin Mu felt a pang of sorrow, and after a moment, he said bitterly, if he hadn't entered the Heaven Alliance, maybe he wouldn't have died. He was harmed because of one word from me, It's not your fault. Elder Messenger of Death said, that's what Celestial Venerable Yun was like. Even though he was crowned as a Celestial Venerable, and didn't say many words usually, he was very warm-hearted. Celestial Venerable Yu once said that before Celestial Venerable Ling suggested establishing the Heaven Alliance, that Celestial Venerable Yun was actually thinking to gather all of the righteous people in the world for the future of the races. Celestial Venerable Yun. He was silent for a moment and hung his head down. He once impersonated Celestial Venerable Yu and also impersonated you and Celestial Venerable Qin, using your names to uphold justice. He preserved a slither of hope for the human race and the other races when they were at their worst. In the Dragon Han era, many people died. At the same time, the human race and the other races were close to not being able to live on any longer, so he could only do that. Qin Mu went into a daze. Earth Count should know which celestial heavens won, right? He suppressed the troubles he had in his heart and asked. Earth Count will never speak of it. Elder Messenger of Death shook his head. I've asked him once, and he didn't say anything. However, after that period of darkness, Earth Count became more depressed. He only does what he needs to do and rarely interferes with the matters of the outside world. I had also wanted to know which side was the victorious side, but I have never seen the face of that person on the Emperor's throne. Qin Mu was slightly stunned. Never seen the face of that person. Elder Messenger of Death nodded his head, and the small boat sailed closer and closer to Earth Count. Celestial Venerable Yu, who was on the bow of the boat, opened his mouth wide in astonishment. He looked at the incomparably huge Earth Count in a daze and couldn't say a word. Never seen before. Elder Messenger of Death's face was calm, and his face was expressionless. He said calmly, everyone says that the Dragon Han era ended 450,000 years ago, and that it was the Crimson Light era afterward. Never did they expect that the Dragon Han never ended. The Dragon Han era always exists. Qin Mu's heart started to throb. The Dragon Han era always exists. Even the Dragon Han celestial heavens, which Earth Count wasn't willing to mention, and didn't breathe a word about, was always around. It was like a huge shadow looming over the entire era. The Crimson Light, the High Emperor, the Founding Emperor, and to the current eternal peace. That celestial heavens had many things that people can't understand. Elder Messenger of Death said, the ancient gods of the ancient gods' celestial heavens are also in that celestial heavens, the gods from the races, and the half-gods are also in that celestial heavens. I really don't know who the final victor was. Let's go meet Earth Count. The paper boat sailed into Earth Count's third eye, and Elder Messenger of Death parked the paper boat. They came into the sacred hall inside the eye. In the sacred hall, the Earth Count that was countless times smaller lowered his head and looked at Celestial Venerable Yu, who was carrying half a chicken. Celestial Venerable Yu was uneasy from his gaze, and he only mustered the courage to raise the half chicken over his head. Do you want to eat? I see that you are hungry as well. Earth Count's gaze flashed, and he shook his head with a sigh. Poor thing, the Celestial Venerable Yu from back then has turned into such a state. You have brought him here to search for that missing soul, am I right? Qin Mu nodded, his head bowed. May Earth Count please cast your spell, and find the location of that missing soul. Back then, I blessed him, so even if you didn't ask me, I would help him. Earth Count opened the eyes in the heart of his brows, and a screen of light shot out from his third eye. He said solemnly, when I saw his corporeal body, I saw his broken soul crossing countless worlds, and the boundless worlds just flickered past in an instant. Celestial Venerable Yu stood in the screen of light and felt uneasy. Outside of the screen of light, worlds flashed past quickly. Majestic mountains and vast deserts flashed by. Countless stars also moved away quickly. After a moment, the screen of light suddenly showed incomparably majestic celestial palaces, towering gods, and the celestial heavens that was forever in the day. The celestial palaces in the light screen passed through Celestial Venerable Yu's body, and the speed became faster and faster. Suddenly, the images gradually slowed and finally stopped in front of the door to a palace. After the image passed through the door, it passed by several pavilions and buildings, coming to an inconceivable space after passing through a few more doors. The image then broke off. Earth Count said, his broken soul is suppressed in the Hall of Fragrance, and the seal in the hall is too strong, so it cut off my gaze. Qin Mu let out a sigh of relief and said with a smile, as long as we know where it is, there's hope. Elder Messenger of Death had a grim expression. He frowned. It was apparent that the Hall of Fragrance wasn't as simple as Qin Mu had thought. The Hall of Fragrance is one of the 72 throne halls. Their arrangements are similar to the celestial palaces. Earth Count said indifferently, even strong practitioners of the numinous sky realm can't enter, much less you. Qin Mu said with a smile, there will always be a way. Earth Count asked, do you know how to enter the celestial heavens? Do you know where is it located? Qin Mu was stunned. He indeed didn't know. Other people called it the extraterritorial celestial heavens, but where this celestial heavens was, even Saint Woodcutter couldn't give an answer. From the beginning to the end, even Saint Woodcutter didn't know who founding Emperor Era's enemy was. Even the consciousness of Crimson Emperor in the Qin word land didn't know who the Crimson Light Era's enemy was. Earth Count took a look at him and said, you may go out first. I have things to talk to official sovereign about. Qin Mu walked out of the sacred hall and popped his head in. Suddenly, the door closed and shut him out. Petty and mysterious. Qin Mu grumbled angrily, but his gaze fell on Elder Messenger of Death's paper boat involuntarily. In the sacred hall, Earth Count looked at Elder Messenger of Death. His broken soul can't be retrieved for now, what do you plan to do? Elder Messenger of Death was silent for a moment. He is my second kin, I need to protect him. He is like white paper now. Earth Count said, furthermore, he is a silly white paper. If he follows you, he will become a shut-in like you, and he will die miserably once he walks out of Youdu. The reason why you could live on for all these years is that you are always in Youdu. If you go out, you would have long died. If he follows you, he will end up like you. Elder Messenger of Death looked silently at Celestial Venerable Yu, who was licking the grease off his fingers. After a moment, he raised his head. I've thought through it, and I'm indeed not suitable to bring him along. I'm thinking of entrusting him to Celestial Venerable Mu. Earth Count said to him, aren't you afraid of him leading Celestial Venerable Yu astray? But at least Celestial Venerable Yu won't die. Elder Messenger of Death said, what I'm worried about is Celestial Venerable Mu not being willing to bring him along. Even though he was warm-hearted in saving Celestial Venerable Yu and took revenge for him with a burning passion, he definitely won't want to take care of Celestial Venerable Yu. Earth Count smirked. He will have no choice but to do it. Now, he is taking your small boat into the deepest parts of Youdu, sneaking in to visit his mother. He is about to commit a grave mistake, and with this mistake, he will have no choice but to bring along this burden Celestial Venerable Yu. Elder Messenger of Death was stunned, and he praised, Earth Count is wise. Part 292. Qin Mu quickly mastered the technique to control the paper boat. The paper boat could be said to be the fastest flying vehicle in Youdu, and with this boat, he could visit his mother, who was suppressed in Youdu. When Earth Count and Celestial Venerable Yu find out, it will already be too late. He stood on the bow of the boat, and there was endless darkness. The small boat floated in the darkness, and seemed to be very lonely. However, Youdu wasn't completely dark. There was also blood that was like lava flowing on the surface of Earth Count's skin. Earth Count was too huge, and his skin was like an armor formed by incomparably durable rocks. The cracks between the rocks were like the vein lines on his skin. The fire-red lava was like blood flowing there. Qin Mu drove the small boat to get closer. From afar, he couldn't see anything on the rock skin, but when he was close, he could see mountains standing tall like a forest. They were like weapons and were very rough. There were also huge devil monsters and devil gods carrying palaces on their backs as they traveled among the mountains. There were also countless green imps surrounding the palaces, which the devil monsters and devil gods were carrying. They were squabbling and launching a war against another group of imps. Blood flowed from the massacre. Green imps were a unique life form in Youdu. Fengdu also had this kind of imp. They had green faces and fangs. Some of the imps were 3 to 5 times larger than a human, but some of them could only reach their knees and stomach. The small ones could run very fast. Among these imps, there were even imp kings with strong and powerful abilities that could rival gods. This kind of war could be seen everywhere in Youdu, and even devil monsters and devil gods would join the battle. The devil monsters and devil gods that carried the palaces had boundless strength, but their weapons were very simple. They just broke off the mountain tops on Earth Count's skin and swung them around like a sturdy club, smashing everything in sight. Sometimes, Qin Mu could even see several primordial spirits of gods walking out from the palaces on the devil monsters and devil gods. They would cast spells or unleash divine arts and divine weapons to fight with the enemies in front of them. Youdu is so lively. Qin Mu looked excited, and when he passed by a battlefield, he stopped his small boat and shouted, "Dao brothers." Both parties that were currently at war were shocked by his voice. Countless green imps stopped their fighting, and the devil monsters on both sides also hurriedly stopped. They propped themselves up with the clubs and looked up at the small boat. The primordial spirits on both sides flew up and stood on the sky. They bowed towards the ship and said, "Official sovereign. We are not worthy of being called Dao brother. Is official sovereign here to kill us? Does Earth Count wants to eat us?" Those two gods that had waged war suddenly huddled together and choked on their tears. Other people also fight like this to seize territories. So why when it comes to our turn does he want to eat us up? Qin Mu hurriedly said, "Don't cry first, Earth Count doesn't want to eat you. I'm just here to ask for directions. After I'm done, I'll leave, you can continue to fight." The primordial spirits of the two gods hurriedly let go of each other. Qin Mu asked, "Where's the place where the dangerous criminals are guarded?" Those two primordial spirits let out sighs of relief and said, "Right in Youdu's Jade Lock Pass, under Earth Count's feet." Qin Mu expressed his thanks and said, "On the way here, I have seen wars everywhere, why is Youdu so chaotic?" Those two primordial spirits looked at one another in the eyes, and they could see the astonishment in each other's eyes. One primordial spirit said carefully, "Could official sovereign have forgotten about what happened 22 years ago? 22 years ago, that person who must not be named fought his way down from the Horn of Nine Bends, crashing through God knows how many levels of hell. He killed God knows how many big shots and ate them. We also only fought for our land after seeing so many lands without owners, as well as to settle our old grudges once and for all." The other primordial spirit nodded his head in a hurry. "The one who must not be named. There's such a terrifying being in Youdu." Qin Mu was bewildered as he sailed away. Those two gods saw the small boat sailing away, only then were they at ease. Strange, why did official sovereign have to ask us for directions? He is benevolent saintly king equal to heaven, so how could he not know Youdu's Jade Lock Pass? How could he not know the little overlord of Youdu? Who cares? Die. I'll reward 30 imp beauties to whoever kills that bastard on the other side. For me to have treated you as a brother when I was alive, yet you dare to tease your sister-in-law. Get rid of this bastard with me." Both sides started to fight again. Qin Mu sailed down Earth Count's body, and the lower he went, the denser the Youdu devil chi was. The devil nature was also becoming stronger and stronger. What he had seen on the way had made his heart pound. There were wars everywhere, and people were fighting from day to night. There were also incomparably strong and terrifying souls that were creating chaos and plundering everywhere. The one that must not be named from Youdu 22 years ago must have committed a lot of evil and killed countless big shots. Only then could he create such huge chaos in Youdu that it's still not quelled until now. Qin Mu felt apprehensive. Looks like the water in Youdu is also very deep. There are talents hidden everywhere. Earth Count still had numerous ancient cities on his body, and there were lights. Gods were stationed there. There were also cities floating in the dark sky, with chains connecting them to the ground. These cities formed formations and looked very dangerous. Qin Mu looked, but didn't get close. He thought to himself, That must be where Lu Li and the extraterritorial celestial heavens are stationed at. It's not wise to get close. After flying a long stretch, he saw dilapidated god cities in the sky. There were pitch-black ruins of cities crushed to the ground, and broken limbs were everywhere in these cities. From the wounds, they seemed to have been bitten in half by some huge and fierce beast. A huge pass stretched out in front of his eyes, and it was like a black iron city wall blocking his wall. Qin Mu was planning to take a detour when he was suddenly stunned. On the majestic wall were handprints that were terrifying to see. The handprints were incomparably huge, and the fingers were like mountains smashed onto the city wall. It was truly 5 fingers like mountains. There were also fist imprints and marks left behind by numerous gods being smashed on the city wall. Bones of devil gods were scattered everywhere on the ground, and the broken weapons piled up like mountains. After a moment, Qin Mu stopped the small boat outside the city gate. The towering city tower and city wall were smashed into pieces, and there was a huge human-sized hole in the walls and gate. It could be inferred that the one that must not be named had a chubby body, but he was incomparably savage. The power of his corporeal body was beyond imagination. The small boat sailed through this hole, and came to an abandoned pass. The former glory of the pass couldn't be seen anymore as everything had been smashed into bits. Suddenly, Qin Mu came to the center of the pass, and he saw tens of thousands of skeletons standing there around huge circles. These skeletons of gods were all tilted towards the center of the circle, as though there was a great force of attraction sucking their body, but they were fighting back against the power. Qin Mu moved the small boat to the center of the circle, and in the center of the circle were 2 huge footprints. He stopped the small boat above the sky. Qin Mu stood on the boat and looked around at the skeletons. These white skeletons must have come attacking after the one who must not be named broke through the city. And at that time, the one who must not be named suddenly exploded with power. Ah! Qin Mu opened his mouth and turned his head to shout at the skeletons in the surroundings. He shook his head and said, "That's not right. They shouldn't have been killed by sound waves. It should be." He turned his head and sucked in a deep breath. He nodded and said, "That's right, just like this." The one who must not be named suddenly sucked away the primordial spirits of all these gods and ate them cleanly. Swallowing tens of thousands of gods in one single mouth, vicious, truly vicious. The small boat sailed out of the pass and continued forward. It came to the bend of Earth Count's legs, and there were chains connecting the cities here. Qin Mu sailed through a towering gate, and only then did he realize there were heaven and earth here. The palaces here were vast, and they stretched out continuously. There were cities in the cities here, but they were all turned into ruins. The devil Qi was dense, and only a few green imps lived here. They were extremely afraid of humans, and when they saw his small boat, they would turn into wisps of black smoke to disappear. Qin Mu had a weird expression, and he quickly moved out of this gate. Raising his head, he saw this gate had also been destroyed. Searching on the ground, he finally saw the words on the broken door, and he sucked in a cold breath. Southern Heavenly Gate. This is a celestial palace. His mind trembled violently, and he composed himself. He flew in once again, and flew past the Jade Pavilion and the Jade Pool. The Jade Pool was dried up as though someone had drunk it dry in one mouthful, while the god execution stage was smashed into smithereens. The Jade Capital was also smashed, and the numinous Sky Hall had huge holes in it. The Emperor's throne was pulled out, and it got squashed by some big buttocks. It was embedded into the ground of the Jade Capital City. Souls with the right to live in the celestial palaces are either strong practitioners on the Emperor's throne realm before they die, or they are on the numinous sky realm. To allow the one who must not be named to destroy this place to such an extent, the master here must have been killed by that vicious fellow. After leaving this celestial palace, he was more and more astonished. The Youdu 22 years ago seemed to have suffered a huge disaster. The life forms living here had all suffered the massacre of the one who must not be named, suffering a huge number of casualties. Earth Count and Celestial Venerable, you still record my deeds on a small booklet. The one who must not be named is the truly evil one, yet they never mentioned him at all. Qin Mu's heart was full of resentment. He came to the feet of Earth Count, and this place had already turned into the ruins of a battlefield. Qin Mu looked over, and his heart jumped. This battlefield was vast, and even his eyesight couldn't see the borders. All he could see were rays of sunlight, and they were the remnants of divine arts that great divine arts practitioners left behind. Each ray of sunlight was 10,000 miles long and gave off a heart-gripping beauty. The land was extremely flat, and no mountains or rivers could be seen. There were hand imprints and fist imprints everywhere in the sky, and the imprints actually couldn't return back to normal even after 20 years. It was evident that the battle here was much more terrifying and scary than the battles in other places. Could the souls of Emperor's throne practitioners have encircled and fought the one who must not be named here? Qin Mu's heart jumped. He carefully sailed through this battlefield and avoided those radiant divine arts. He was more and more astonished as he looked at them. The severity of this battle was beyond imagination, and the gods and devils that were mobilized were probably a terrifying amount. Yet he saw the footprints of the one who must not be named at the borders of the battlefield. The footprints were very deep and very fat. It was evident that this battle didn't kill the one who must not be named, and instead, he had fought his way out. The one who must not be named was the final victor. There's still such a terrifying existence in Youdu. Qin Mu took in a long breath and thought to himself, I need to be careful with my words in case I offend that terrifying strong practitioner in Youdu. That's right, it's just like what village chief said, you never go wrong with being too polite. He came to where Earth Count was standing, and the devil nature here was dense and very terrifying. However, the devil nature and devil chi gathered down to form the land under Earth Count's feet. The small boat left Earth Count's feet, and he instantly saw a majestic and vast city in black, and it looked as though it was made from black jade. The whole city seemed to be one, and he couldn't find any connections between the jade. This place should be Youdu's Jade Lock Pass. Qin Mu moved the small boat to fly up and tried to fly across the walls to enter the pass. However, as the boat flew up, the black jade wall also flew up, and no matter how fast the small boat flew, it could never fly past the city wall to enter the pass. Qin Mu tried for a long time, before searching for the city gate along the city wall obediently. He didn't know how long later, it was when he finally found the city gate of Jade Lock Pass. Outside the city gate, 2 devil gods guarded there with axes in their hands. When they saw the paper boat flying over, they were about to bow when they saw a youth instead of elder messenger of death on the boat. They couldn't help being bewildered. One of the devil gods asked, Whose child are you? Why have you come to Jade Lock Pass? Why do you have benevolent Saint King equal to heaven's boat? Qin Mu hurriedly said, Hi gods, I am Qin Mu Qin Fengqing. I'm here to visit my mother. Those 2 devil gods looked each other in the eyes, and one of them said lazily, You are here to visit your mother. Do you have your passport? Qin Mu shook his head. I don't. The other devil god looked around, and he lowered his voice. Do you have any bling bling? Qin Mu was puzzled. What is bling bling? How are you so dense? Bling bling means natural treasures, things that are worthy of looking at. That devil god scolded, This is a place that guards the great danger and great evil, but you don't have a passport, or any valuable things to bribe us. Do you really want to go in? Why don't you just be on your way? Qin Mu hurriedly smiled and said, I have some treasures. How is this boat of heavenly saintly king equal to heaven? Can I use this boat to exchange for a chance to enter the pass? That devil god sneered and said, What do you need a boat for? We also can't leave this place. The other devil god had a slight change of expression when he saw this boat. He hurriedly stopped him and smiled apologetically to Qin Mu. He's just joking with you, you can just go in. Qin Mu gave his thanks and walked into Jade Lock Pass. Are you tired of living? The voices from those two devil gods came from behind. That's benevolent saintly king equal to heaven's boat. Has he ever lent his boat to others? This person named Qin Fengqing must be a trusted aid of saintly king to have his boat. If you chase him away, and he complains to saintly king, you and I will be in trouble. Brother is still the perceptive one, I was reckless. What relationship does this youth have with saintly king? To be able to even borrow his ship, he must have quite a background. He's most likely a guest from the celestial heavens. Wait a minute, what was his name again? I had only thought of how to extort a sum from him, and didn't hear clearly. The two devil gods looked at each other in dismay. One of the devil gods braved himself, and called Qin Mu back. Hey you, please stop for a moment, what did you say your name was? Can you repeat it once more? Qin Mu turned his head back, and his smile was very radiant. Hi gods, my name is Qin Mu Qin Fengqing. The minds of the two gods were blown. They looked at him walking into Jade Lock Pass. At this moment, another two devil gods came to take over their shifts, and they shook their heads with a smile. Someone has come to Jade Lock Pass, senior brothers, have you checked this person? Those two gods stood there dumbfounded. The devil gods that had come to take over frowned and could smell the foul smell of piss when they walked forward. They confirmed it with the water under their feet. Qin. One of them stuttered. Qin, Qin. Qin. The one who must not be named is back. Their voice became incomparably resounding and sharp. This is bad. The one who must not be named is back, and he has barged into Jade Lock Pass. Get ready. Get ready. Quickly inform the gods everywhere. The one who must not be named is back to fetch his mother. In Jade Lock Pass, Qin Mu heard shouts coming from behind and was astonished. He looked back, and when the four devil gods saw him looking back, fear struck deep into their hearts. With a few thumps, the four devil gods fainted. The one that must not be named. Could it be me? Qin Mu was speechless and broke into laughter. He only shook his head after a moment and thought to himself, 22 years ago. In that case, I'm 22 years old now. Village chief said I'm 22 while Granny said I'm 21, now we finally have an answer, they don't have to fight anymore. Hey, the four of you. He shouted and warned them out of kindness. Are you guys not escaping? Are you perhaps waiting for me to eat? Those four devil gods that had fainted immediately flipped themselves up and vanished after transforming into four beams of devil light. My brother's ominous name is actually so powerful. Qin Mu sighed ruefully. The journey to Jade Lock Pass, this time being abnormally smooth, was also out of his expectations. Beatings of drums came from the pass, and killing aura was in the air. He could immediately feel countless terrifying auras coming out from the pass, so it was obvious that quite a number of soldiers and cavalry were stationed there. They had tight security, in case the existences guarded inside escaped. Qin Mu composed himself, and secretly took off the willow leaf covering the heart of his brows. He said with a low voice, "Brother, I'm here to visit Mother." His eye sockets suddenly became red, and he revealed a warm smile. You have met Mother before, but I have never seen her before. Mother carried you and kissed you before, but she never carried nor kissed me. If it wasn't for your huge mistake, I wouldn't have been unable to meet Father and Mother. In the third eye on the heart of his brow, a big-headed, weird baby sat there and looked at the sky. Heaven Duke and Crimson Emperor couldn't help becoming nervous. Heaven Duke's clone shouted, "Qin Feng." Qin Mu, what are you trying to do? Don't be reckless. Qin Mu's voice rang out. Who doesn't want to be happy under their parents' knees when they are young? Who doesn't want to have parents to accompany them when they are young? But I didn't have the chance to. Brother, I'm here to see mother, you have to make it up to me. Today. His body trembled, and his voice was slightly hoarse. I need to borrow your strength, brother. I can't control the devil nature, but you can. You can't control the divine art, but I can. Brother, Qin Fengqing, come out. The clone of Heaven Duke and the consciousness of Crimson Emperor scolded furiously, don't be reckless. Above the land, the sky trembled and Qin Mu's consciousness pierced the sky. Brother, let us combine into one, let us go meet mother. The big-headed baby rushed into the sky and flew out. Don't. The clone of Heaven Duke and consciousness of Crimson Emperor flew out of the sky to suddenly see the seal strengthening. It was Qin Mu covering the willow leaf and sealing them in the Qin word seal. Both of them landed on the ground, and they felt a chill in their hearts. Qin Mu, this rascal, he can't control the devil nature at all, he can't control Qin Fengqing. The clone of Heaven Duke was angry, and he walked to and fro anxiously. He suddenly raised his head to look at the Buddha in midair. He shouted in a hurry, Old Buddha, quickly wake up, something big is happening. The Buddha was asleep and couldn't hear his words. This old Buddha, is he here to suppress Qin Fengqing, or to sleep? The consciousness of Crimson Emperor was also in a fury. Qin Mu's body trembled, and his corporeal body expanded step by step, his arms starting to grow out. At the same time, another 2 necks grew out. He had 6 shoulders and 6 arms that were holding up 3 heads. One of the heads suddenly transformed quickly and turned into that of a child. Qin Mu instantly felt an incomparably terrifying power flooding out. That kind of power wasn't from opening the celestial palaces. Raising one's realm couldn't provide such a power. This was the power of law, the law of Youdu. This was the power of heaven and earth, the power of Youdu's Tao. He was like an ancient god born from heaven and earth, like a half-god that had grown stronger as he grew. He had both the advantages of an ancient god and a half-god. Bad brother, let me control the power, and you can control the law. That baby gave off a childish voice. Qin Mu felt power pouring into his corporeal body like an ocean, and his body expanded once again. His muscles kept bulging, and all kinds of Youdu's great Tao transformed into countless information. The information flooded into his mind, allowing him to understand without any explanation. The big-headed baby transformed by Qin Fengqing controlled the devil nature, while he controlled the power and law. He grew taller and taller until he reached the clouds. He was as tall as the mountains. Kai. Qin Mu tore down the willow leaf again, and in Qin word land now, Heaven Duke and Crimson Emperor could see the world outside. The seal had already become very thin, and Crimson Emperor tried to break through the seal. Heaven Duke's clone shook his head and said, Don't bother trying to escape, you can't. Qin Mu and Qin Fengqing have combined forces, and they have already completely mastered the power of Son of Youdu. The reason he opened up the seal is that, with the power he has now, he doesn't have to be afraid of us meddling. Crimson Emperor's consciousness flew into the sky, and he saw that the seal had indeed become incomparably thick. There was no possibility of breaking through. Just admit defeat. Heaven Duke sighed. We can only hope Qin Mu is still rational, and not controlled by his brother. In the pass, the army of gods guarding Jade Lock Pass gave off an austere aura, and they stood in the high tower. With bows and arrows in their hands and their sharp gazes, they waited strictly. Thud, thud, thud. Heavy footsteps rang out as the land and mountains shook. Beads of cold sweat rolled down the god's forehead. Don't be afraid. A devil general was awe-inspiring and had an extraordinary manner. His cultivation was extremely high, and it was obvious he was the general here. He guarded this place under the orders of Earth Count, and he shouted, "Don't be afraid." Earth Count has sealed him for over 20 years. Even if he breaks through the seal now, he would at most have his abilities from 20 years ago. With the treasures that Earth Count has given us, we don't have to be scared of him. He shouted, "We, the army of Jade Lock Pass, is never afraid of son of Youdu. He is here, take him down." At this moment, he saw a 3-headed and 6-armed god walking over, and he was covered in Youdu markings. Those markings seemed to have transformed into the great Tao of Youdu, and marked themselves on the skin of this god. He grew 3 heads. One was a child, and the other 2 were youths. Among these 2 heads, one had a cold and calm gaze while the other had a warm and fervent gaze. That god general had a dazed look, and the corner of his eyes twitched violently. "We are finished, we are finished." When he didn't know divine arts, we could still fight, but now his attainments in Youdu divine arts are higher than any of us here. We are done for. The 3-headed and 6-armed Qin Mu walked in front of the god camp, and looked at those god soldiers. Qin Fengqing turned his head around and licked his lips in excitement. "Bad brother, with your methods, you can completely devour here with one mouth. As long as you savor the taste of these delicious little things, you will yearn for them and come to love eating them. They are very refreshing." Qin Mu suddenly bowed and said solemnly, "I'm here to visit my mother. If you don't obstruct me, you won't die. May Dao brothers let me through." That devil god general's body froze, and he had a coarse voice. "I am guarding this place under Earth Count's command." Boom. Qin Mu suddenly exploded and executed his martial path divine art in an instant. Return of 1,000 palms beyond the strange peaks of heavens was unleashed, and palms, fists, mudras, and fingers that were like mountains rained down in the surroundings. The ground and sky were shattered, and a huge abyss was created. That devil god general looked at the abyss in front of the camp, and his eyes twitched furiously. The size of the abyss was exactly the same as the god camp. Which also meant that if Qin Mu's attack had landed on them, he could have wiped out everyone straight away. "Son of Youdu, please." That devil god general stretched out his hands. Qin Mu walked 2 steps before stopping. Cold beads of sweat rolled down the devil god general's forehead. Qin Mu said, "I don't know the way, I need a guide, please." That devil god general gritted his teeth, and flew out of the camp. He said solemnly, "I will personally lead the way for son of Youdu." Qin Mu expressed his thanks. That devil god general braced himself to lead the way in front. He felt a gaze that kept staring at his neck, so he turned around secretly to take a look. He saw that chubby baby drooling as he stared at him. "How fat and tender, he. Good brother, let me have a lick. I won't eat him, just a taste." In Youdu, incomparably ancient celestial palaces rumbled as incomparably powerful existences were waking up one by one. Son of Youdu is back again. Back then it was Earth Count who made a decision to protect his life by exiling him. He still dares to return. If we kill him this time, Earth Count would have nothing to say, right? Go to Jade Lock Pass and take our revenge. Youdu, on the body of Earth Count, streaks of light flowed, and they brought along overflowing aura towards Jade Lock Pass. The entire Youdu became lively in this instant. At the eye of Earth Count, Elder Messenger of Death looked at the ruckus below and felt the ancient auras. He felt uneasy and said, "Earth Count, should we interfere? I'm afraid Celestial Venerable Mu won't be able to block them. He is another Earth Count." Earth Count's voice came from the hall. How could an Earth Count without any restraint be unable to block them? Elder Messenger of Death's heart trembled slightly. Part 293. Earth Count without any restraints. Elder Messenger of Death knew that Earth Count was a god born by heaven and earth. Much of his actions had to be restrained by the rules of Youdu, rules that couldn't be exceeded. Even his growth had to be included in the system of Youdu, and he couldn't break away from the rules of the great Tao of Youdu. He was the image of Youdu's Tao, and even though he had his own consciousness and thoughts, his actions couldn't break away from the categories from the great Tao of Youdu. However, that little fellow that was born in Youdu is different. He is the first life form in Youdu that was born from the womb. He is different from Earth Count and also different from the imps, monsters, and Youdu devil gods that were naturally formed in Youdu. Earth Count's voice came from the sacred hall. An elder messenger of death turned back to take a look. Celestial Venerable Yu sat at the entrance of the hall and gnawed on his other half of the chicken. He is like me, blessed by the law of the great Tao of Youdu when he was born. At that time, I even thought I was going to have a younger brother. I only knew it wasn't so afterward. The third eye of Earth Count was shining brightly and sealed their words inside the eye so it wouldn't travel outside. The growth of that little fellow is astonishing, and because he is a life form after the beginning of heaven and earth, he is not under the control of the great Tao of Youdu. He just eats whoever he wants, he just beats whoever he wants. Even though Qin Fengqing stopped at no evil, Earth Count seemed to be enjoying it for some reason. Qin Fengqing was like a small Earth Count. If he grew up, he would be a big Earth Count that would commit a whole lot of evil, thus Earth Count had no choice but to seal and suppress him, exiling him to the outside world. What's even stranger is that Qin Fengqing, who got suppressed and exiled, turned into Qin Mu. Qin Fengqing was initially not under the control of the great Tao of Youdu, and when it comes to Qin Mu's side, he has completely broken away from the law of the great Tao of Youdu, cultivating paths, skills, and divine arts that are outside of Youdu. Celestial Venerable Yu, who was currently eating chicken, looked out of the hall and saw that the god with bull horns and tiger head was revealing a weird expression. He was obviously puzzled at how Qin Mu was able to break away from the law of the great Tao of Youdu. My seal turned him into an ordinary person who couldn't cultivate, yet a second consciousness was born from that body. He went through challenging experiences, and somehow got by my seal and cultivated quite the achievements, with a corporeal body that was impossible to cultivate with. Earth Count said with a weird expression, the first consciousness, is Qin Fengqing was born from the devil nature of Youdu. He is like an ancient god, a half-god, and also a life form after the beginning. The second consciousness was Qin Mu, a life form after the beginning from the start to the end, yet he surprises me the most. Under Qin Mu's ruckus, Qin Fengqing had also almost broken through Earth Count's seal several times. As a result, Earth Count had to come and fix things 2 to 3 times. And because he understood, that was why the person with the greatest hope for Qin Mu Qin Fengqing was actually Earth Count. He wanted to find a way to break out of his restraints from Qin Mu. Him saying Qin Mu was an unrestrained Earth Count wasn't an over-exaggeration. In Earth Count's eyes, Qin Fengqing and Qin Mu were the same person. They weren't brothers, even though to them they were older and younger brothers. The younger brother felt that the older brother was full of evil, and the older brother felt the younger brother was full of naughty tricks. To break out of my restraint, I tried many ways, but they had all failed. This is my chance. Earth Count's gaze was deep, and when Celestial Venerable Yu looked over, he felt that his 3 eyes were 3 abysses that couldn't be measured. Ripples would occasionally be formed. Jade Lock Pass. That devil god general led the 3-headed and 6-armed Qin Mu into the pass, as beads of cold sweat kept dripping down his forehead. That was because he felt very uncomfortable from Qin Fengqing, who kept staring at his head and neck. An image kept appearing in his mind, and that was the sight of this huge baby gnawing on his head. How do I call Dao brother? One of Qin Mu's heads surveyed the surroundings, and the other head talked to him pleasantly. Youdu's Jade Lock Pass left Soul Guardian Mo to me. The eyes of that devil god general twitched, and he thought to himself, in the past, son of Youdu didn't have this habit. In the past, he would just eat without saying anything. Now he has become polite, he would ask the name before he eats. What is over there? Qin Mu pointed at a black stone tablet, and asked politely. Left Soul Guardian Mochimi looked at the black stone tablet and said, this is the Soul Suppression Monument, also known as Hellfire Virtue Monument. They are made from the teeth that fall off of Earth Count, and they are used to suppress the evil here. People with great virtues wouldn't be suppressed, but those with grave sins would suffer from the hellfire here. They can't release their magic power either, and the pain would multiply. Qin Mu looked into the distance, and saw that the hellfire virtue monuments here were like a forest. There was one every 300 yards, and there were many of them. Earth Count has so many teeth. He was stunned and whispered under his breath, could Earth Count's teeth have been broken off by someone? Qin Fengqing said excitedly, Earth Count's teeth are black, my teeth are white. Look, look. He opened his mouth and revealed his mouth full of razor-sharp teeth that were gleaming with a cold glint. His gaze sparkled as he said, Mochimi, come to me and take a closer look. Left Soul Guardian Mochimi stumbled, and he brought him towards the forest formed by hellfire virtue monuments. The number of stone tablets here was beyond Qin Mu's imagination, and he still hadn't walked to the end after so long. The stone tablets are in the tens of thousands. How many teeth must Earth Count have to forge so many stone tablets? Left Soul Guardian took a glance at Qin Mu and was astonished. He had originally thought that once this extremely evil existence entered the monument forest, he would be suppressed by Earth Count's hellfire virtue monument. With hellfire on his body, he would be in excruciating pain. Yet Qin Mu walked into the forest without anything happening at all. Furthermore, that big-headed baby was still sucking in the hellfire excitedly, and the hellfire came swooping over like noodles into his mouth. He smacked his lips in content. Does this guy have any weakness at all? Fear crept up in his heart. Suddenly, there was someone walking with difficulty in the monument forest in front, and it was a soul surrounded by hellfire. His face was distorted in the flames, and his mouth, eye sockets, and ears had all become black holes. He seemed to be crying out in pain. This is Heavenly King Yuan. Left Soul Guardian said, Heavenly King Yuan was a god from 1,000,000 years ago. He was the general of the Dragon Han Celestial Heaven's feathered forest guards. He was a god in charge of flight. He was originally a huge peacock born from heaven and earth, but because he liked to swallow half-gods and weak life forms, he could eat 1,000,000 people with one mouth, and thus, he committed a grave sin. That is why he is suppressed in Jade Lock Pass after his death, and why he has to walk in the monument forest day and night. He has already suffered the burn of the hellfire for 1,000,000 years. He keeps walking in the forest, but no matter how many years he walks, he can never get out until the day his sins are completely exhausted. What will welcome him then shall be the engulf of Earth Count. After he said that, he took a glance at Qin Mu. Qin Mu said respectfully, Earth Count is fair in his rewards and punishments, he is impartial. This matter is settled beautifully. Left Soul Guardian thought to himself, you have done so much evil, so aren't you scared? Of course, he didn't dare to say this out directly. He continued to walk forward, and they met another person. It was the primordial spirit of a half-god. He was carrying a mountain and walking in the hellfire. He got burned until he kept crying out in pain. This is Xie Wuqi, Crown Prince of the Dragon Han Celestial Heavens. He is a strong practitioner that has the bloodline of Celestial Emperor and Celestial Empress. When he grew to adulthood, his abilities were equivalent to a strong practitioner on Emperor's throne, thus he rebelled and tried to usurp the throne. After he died, he was suppressed here, said Left Soul Guardian. Half-god, Emperor's throne. The big-headed baby instantly drooled like a waterfall, and rubbed his hands in excitement. Qin Mu suddenly felt his body becoming shorter, and he saw himself crawling over towards Xie Wuqi as he planned to eat him. Brother, don't be reckless. It's more important to meet mother. The big baby sighed in pity, and only then did Qin Mu recover control of his body. They continued forward, and Left Guardian Mochimi said, the deeper the gods are being suppressed at, the greater their sins are. From the past to the present, all great criminals are being suppressed here. No matter how evil or powerful they were when they were alive, they will still have to suffer here once they die. After saying that, he took another glance at Qin Mu. Qin Mu still didn't notice anything. My mother has never committed any evil, so why is she suppressed at the deepest part of the monument forest? The big-headed baby was rather indignant, and he said angrily, it's all my fault, mother is not involved. Earth Count isn't fair, if I catch him, I'll eat him after plucking off his head and legs. Left Soul Guardian shuddered, and he thought to himself, this guy is unreasonably cruel. They continued forward and saw more and more primordial spirits of strong practitioners that were suppressed here. No matter how remarkable they were when they were alive, they still had to suffer hellfire like ordinary people. And this kind of torture seemed to have no end, and they didn't know when they would be released. Is mother also going through such torture? Qin Mu felt a pang of sorrow. After passing by God knows how many hellfire virtue monuments, they finally came to the center of the monument forest. Over here, the monuments were densely packed with one every 3 to 5 steps. However, not many primordial spirits could be seen. Qin Mu was puzzled, and he suddenly saw the black stone tablets forming a huge circle. This circle was about 3,000 yards in radius, and there were still stone tablets forming layers and layers of hoops in the circle. Looking at the center of the circle, there was a god with bull horns and a tiger head being shackled by black chains. Hellfire burned continuously around his body. Qin Mu's expression changed drastically, and he looked at Left Soul Guardian. However, Mochimi didn't seem to see the god that was being suppressed and walked around it. Qin Mu stretched out his hand to lift him up before asking pleasantly, Lord Left Guardian, what is up with the Earth Count in the monument forest? Why is there an Earth Count suppressed here? Don't be reckless. Left Soul Guardian cried out. I would rather die and not say a word. Qin Mu threw him to the big-headed baby, and Qing Fengqing hugged him tightly. Brother is so nice. I'm really going to eat, time to eat. I'll say. Qin Mu hurriedly grabbed him back, and Qin Fengqing was furious. He raised his 2 fists and smacked ruthlessly at Qin Mu's head. Bad brother. I'll beat you to death. That is Earth Count's reincarnation. Left Soul Guardian still hadn't recovered from his shock and quickly touched his head. He gave a sigh of relief when he realized his head was still attached. During the early period of the Dragon Han era, Earth Count reincarnated once, and this body was him who had reincarnated. Qin Mu's face was all bruised, and he used creation divine arts to remove the bruises by improving his blood circulation. He asked curiously, so why has Earth Count suppressed his reincarnation here? Left Soul Guardian said, I was born during the High Emperor era, how would I know these ancient matters? Qin Mu lifted him up again, and Left Soul Guardian hurriedly said, I'll say. I'll just say everything, will that do? Qin Mu placed him down, and Left Soul Guardian hesitated for a moment. He looked around and said with a low voice, so I've heard. I've heard rumors so it might not be real. Don't spread it out, and don't say it's me who told you this. Qin Mu nodded his head repeatedly. I've heard that Earth Count reincarnated then, because he wanted to find a way to improve himself, and also allow his bloodline to be passed down. After he reincarnated, he still looked the same, but he had a body of flesh and blood. He then discovered he had 7 emotions and 6 desires. But because he was ugly. Left Soul Guardian hesitated for a moment and asked pitifully, you really won't spread it out? Don't worry. Qin Mu patted his chest heavily and said, if I spread it, I will be erased by heaven and earth. Quickly tell me. Qin Fengqing also got curious and hurried him. So what happened after he was ugly? Because he was ugly, he wasn't too welcome by people. Left Soul Guardian gulped his saliva and plucked up his courage. Everyone started to shout at him and viewed him as a demonic monster. There were also some ancient beings that knew he had reincarnated, and they knew it was a good time to get rid of him, so they laid their hands on him. Because of his own identity, Earth Count didn't retaliate. Then came the day when his wife and daughter were killed, and Earth Count's devil nature went berserk. He actually wasn't limited by the law of Youdu, and so he retaliated. He revealed a look of terror on his face, and his voice was hoarse. I've heard many ancient gods died, and the half-gods that died were uncountable. After Earth Count returned, he suppressed his reincarnation, and let his reincarnation suffer here. Qin Mu looked at Earth Count's reincarnation. He must have been an incomparably strong devil god during the Dragon Han era, but the sins he carried caused him continuous suffering under the hellfire. Earth Count was selfless, and even if he were the one who made a mistake, he wouldn't let himself off the hook. However, one could see from this how many ancient gods and half-gods had died in Earth Count's hands, for the hellfire to burn for 1,000,000 years and still be burning fiercely. Earth Count had used hundreds of hellfire virtue monuments to suppress himself in hopes of washing away his sins. The reincarnated Earth Count must have been extremely furious, so furious that he broke through his shackles. Back then, he must have been completely controlled by the devil nature. Qin Mu thought of his older brother and compared them. Earth Count, who got controlled by his murderous intent, was different from Qin Fengqing. Qin Fengqing was like a vicious, but ignorant child. Even though many people told Qin Mu that Qin Fengqing was controlled by his devil nature, and only knew how to kill, Qin Mu still felt his brother wasn't controlled by the devil nature. He controlled the devil nature. Comparing how the reincarnation of Earth Count had acted and how Qin Fengqing had acted, he could affirm this point even more. Walking slightly forward, that would be Qin Fengqing's place of punishment. Left Soul Guardian hesitated and said, I'll send you guys here, I won't be going in. Qin Mu said with a smile, just a little bit more. Once we are there, I won't force Dao brother to stay. Left Soul Guardian could only brace himself and continue walking forward. There were numerous hellfire virtue monuments in front, and after walking 3 to 5 miles, the surroundings opened up into a clearing. There were green mountains, and small rivers flowing from the top to the bottom of the mountains, meandering past fields of crops and into the lake. Several hen dragons were currently running in the fields, and they chased after 3-legged toads while clucking non-stop. Those hen dragons stood beside the shore and clucked angrily at the toads that floated up in the lake. Qin Mu was stunned. This barren Youdu was supposed to have no greenery. Volcanoes, lava, and monsters were everywhere. Yet over here, in the famous Jade Lock Pass, a forbidden ground that was supposed to suppress the evils, there was actually such green hills and clear waters. This was truly strange. When he looked down the mountains, he saw a few households below, and there were women weaving in front of the door while farmer girls were gathering mulberry leaves to feed the silkworms. There were also a few farmers harvesting vegetables. This place didn't look like Youdu. It didn't look like a forbidden ground that was used to imprison serious criminals, and instead, it looked like a peaceful small village in the great ruins. They don't have hellfire on their bodies, and even if they do, they are long gone. Left Soul Guardian whispered, back then, when they barged into Youdu, they literally sent themselves into the trap. There were the 4 great provincial governors that the celestial heavens had stationed in Youdu. There were also other powers in ambush. After they barged in, they had to hide left and right. Within a few days' time, you were born, and you got caught up by the pursuers from the celestial heavens. You should have some memory of what happened next, right? Qin Mu shook his head and said uncertainly, my brother should remember, I wasn't born back then. Those that beat mother were all eaten up by me. Qin Fengqing said ruthlessly. Back then, you were too ruthless, and you destroyed the army of the 4 great provincial governors that the celestial heavens had stationed in Youdu. The 4 of them suffered heavy injuries, and they still haven't recovered their vitality completely, even now. Left Soul Guardian said, these 4 great provincial governors are also not nice people. They have wide networks of friends in Youdu, and they invited the other big shots of Youdu. These big shots were either beaten, eaten, or killed, and this attracted numerous ancient beings. Then, the exact same thing happened again. At that time, Youdu was simply too lively. Numerous existences that didn't belong to Youdu also sneaked in and looked at this commotion. Because the entire incident was blown up way beyond proportion, Earth Count had no choice but to suppress you. Your mother took your place for the punishment and got sealed here. Qin Fengqing, go and reunite with your mother. He paused and said, but don't think of bringing her out. Back then, to protect you, Earth Count also spent quite some effort. Otherwise, you would already be dead. It wasn't as simple as letting your mother suffer in your place. Back then, those that sneaked into Youdu didn't simply come for the show, danger was actually lying all around. Qin Mu was silent. Over 20 years ago, there were indeed countless powerful existences that had went to look at the show. Based on what he knew, Brahma Buddha and Heaven Duke had both sent their clones. And other than them, Son of Heaven Yin had also infiltrated Youdu. This was still only what he knew. There must be even more that he didn't know. Furthermore, Earth Count didn't create trouble for your mother and you, so don't trouble Earth Count this time. Left Soul Guardian said, don't try to bring her away, she's very good here, and she will only be in more danger if she goes out. And also, be careful when you go out. Qin Mu bowed and said, many thanks, Dao brother. Qin Fengqing hesitated and said, I won't eat you this time, but you better run faster the next time you see me. I won't eat you if I can't catch you. Remember, you must run faster. Left Soul Guardian smiled and turned to leave. Qin Mu looked at the small village at the foot of the mountain, and his emotions couldn't calm down for a long, long time. He finally composed himself and took a step forward. His body became smaller and smaller, and he transformed back into his normal size from an incomparably huge giant. His footsteps sped up, and he suddenly stopped. Qin Fengqing wasn't willing to walk forward anymore. Qin Mu was puzzled and asked with a soft voice, brother, didn't you want to meet mother the most? She doesn't want to see me. Qin Fengqing lowered his head and said bitterly, it was her who put the jade pendant on me to seal me. I can still remember the fear in her eyes when she looked at me. I don't want her to feel scared. I'm going back into the seal, you can go meet her by yourself. Tell her I'm being sealed properly and can't come out. Tell her not to be scared. Qin Mu had an indescribable feeling in his heart, and after, power faded away, and he sensed the other him in his body had vanished. Qin Fengqing had returned back to Qin Word Land. Qin Mu was in a daze. In Qin Word Land, that big-headed baby also sat on the ground in a daze. After a moment, this baby crawled quickly to find Heaven Duke and Crimson Emperor to vent his anger. Qin Mu composed himself and dispersed his 3 heads and 6 arms. He walked towards the small village. He got closer and closer to the small village, and the village was in peace. The farmers in the fields straightened their backs, and they looked at him walking over in a daze. Qin Mu smiled and nodded his head as a sign of goodwill. Those farmers were somehow affected by his smile, and they also nodded their heads and smiled in return. How similar. A farmer muttered, he looks so similar to King Zhen. Who is he? Qin Mu came to the village entrance, and the few village women that were feeding the silkworms saw him. They turned their heads to examine him, and their eyes sparkled. They were gods that had cultivated to celestial palace realm, and even though they were wearing coarse and rough clothing, their beauty couldn't be hidden. Qin Mu revealed a smile and said, "Big sisters, my name is Qin Fengqing. I'm from Carefree Village, and ended up in the Great Ruins. My age this year is 22, and I'm here to look for my mother." Those village women were stunned, and the bamboo winnowing baskets fell to the ground, scattering the mulberry leaves on the floor. The woman that was currently weaving in the village suddenly trembled, and she turned around. Qin Mu saw her face, and it was the same face he had seen on his father Qin Hanzhen's ship. That was the face of his mother he had yearned for day and night. On the treasure ship, he had seen an echo of history, and that was what his parents had encountered when they drove the treasure ship from Carefree Village to the Great Ruins. That was the first time he had seen his parents and knew he still had family in this world. He could never forget that sight. The woman in front of the spinning wheel stood up, and she looked at him helplessly. Even though she was dressed in coarse clothing, her bearing was still graceful and elegant. It was just that her mind was in a mess right now, and she didn't know where to place her hands. She stumbled over and looked at this youth at the village entrance. She knocked the frames that were holding up the gauze, and got tripped by a water cauldron, almost falling down. "Fengqing. Are you Fengqing?" she asked from afar. "Mother." Qin Mu knelt down and bowed his body to the ground. "Your child has returned." A pair of warm yet trembling hands helped him up, and that pair of gentle eyes looked at him in agitation. Her voice trembled as she asked, "Are you Fengqing? I've always missed you. Whenever I dream, I reproach myself when I see myself putting the jade pendant around your neck. I would always be jolted awake by nightmares of you dying outside, of you dying in the basket. I've always missed you, and I'm always worried about you. I was worried you would encounter dangers outside." Qin Mu gave a warm smile and held her hands tightly. "Mother, I've come back in one piece." "You're back." That woman choked on her tears and held onto his hands tightly. She wasn't willing to let go, as she was afraid this was a dream. She was afraid of him fading away like a dream. Several farmers walked over and looked at this pair of mother and son. Those few village women walked over and said with a soft voice, "Princess Consortian, it's good that His Little Highness is back, there's no need to be sad. This is a happy occasion." Another woman said with a smile, "I shall catch some frogs and slaughter some chickens, let us have a nice meal today." "Oi, Left Assistant Minister, let us go catch frogs. Catch those few fish in the lake too." That Left Assistant Minister hurriedly said, "We can also harvest the vegetables at the village entrance, quickly prepare some. There are also fruits in the mountains, I shall go grab a few plates of fruits." They quickly became busy, and Qin Mu's mother was still looking at him, afraid that she was dreaming. Qin Mu told her about his encounters in disabled elderly village, about how he got chased by hen dragons, how he trained beside the surging river. He told her about all his fun times and scandals, over-exaggerating certain parts, and tried his best to cheer his mother up. That woman listened quietly, and she suddenly burst into laughter. However, tears streaked down her cheeks. "Where Pinga?" she asked. "Pinga delivered you to the world of the living, so why isn't she with you?" Qin Mu's expression dimmed, and he broke into a smile in the next instant. "Mother, let me tell you about the interesting things that happened to me in eternal peace. Your Aunt Pinga has passed away, am I right?" Qin Mu was silent. He then said bitterly, "Granny Sai picked me up by the riverside and Aunt Pinga's corpse was under the water, lifting me up. Then, she was swept away by the current. Afterward, I met her on the river surface, and I told her I was very well. Only then did she leave in peace. Mother, Big Brother also wants to meet you very much." This video will end here.